Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well. I have a bonus upload for you all. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As you all know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership are in the description below. The merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into today's bonus, shall we? Today's first part of the upload. October 2018, I was hospitalized for 4 nights. I was put on a surgical wing due to a lack of beds and was in a 4-person room with all rooms near me, having 4 people as well. The last night of my stay was on October 31st, which of course is Halloween. Other than it being noisy from the fireworks outside, followed by heavy rain, it was uneventful. I was particularly restless that night and not having any easy time falling asleep. Just before midnight, and I remember looking at the clock seeing 11:47 because I couldn't fall asleep, I saw a figure in the window next to my bed. It was a massive black dog, like a long-haired husky with the reddest eyes I had ever seen. It was such a deep, but at the same time bright crimson. It was just staring at me and I felt frozen. I turned over and covered my face, and when I looked over some time later, it was gone. I should note that I was on the upper floor with a roof landing outside of my window, so no way any animal could have gotten up there. I ignored it, called the nurse, and asked for something to help me sleep. They told me I didn't need anything and would eventually fall asleep. About a half an hour later, I saw the same creature staring at me from inside a window within the hospital across from mine. I immediately felt sick and panicked, and as quick as I saw it, it was gone. Several minutes later, my wing went on lockdown. The doors all closed, and all I could hear was screams and the nurses running. The screams and panic went on for hours. I found out the next morning that a pregnant woman in the room next to mine had died from adverse reaction to medication she was given. She went into complete psychosis and at one point was running through the halls, banging on everyone's doors, begging for help, claiming something was trying to kill her. I'll never get those sounds out of my head. I have no idea what hellhounds are until I got home and searched what I saw. I've let it lie dormant in my brain since then, but recently I've been having dreams where they show up and are terrifying. I'm so lost as to what to make of it, and terrified to make any assumptions. Today's second part of the upload is pertaining to what I discussed in the intro. Over 1,600 people have gone missing in our national parks. The federal government does not keep tabs on this for a reason, and the only reason I can come up with is so they are not liable. This is an interesting article I stumbled across while doing some research on today's upload. I typed in missing person in Montana 2020. All I got was this article that pertained to the year 2020. There is a vast number of other articles, but none for 2020 except this one. And what's strange about this article is there's not a name mentioned. There's no missing persons report put out. There's nothing. I'm going to share this with you, and you guys can make your own assumptions and decisions, but I have already made mine. On Thanksgiving morning, November 26th, Ruby Valley Search and Rescue was called out on a mission to search for a missing hiker in the remote area of the Upper Ruby. The missing hunter had missed check-in with his family via his usual method using a spot device, so they called 911 based on the hunter's last check-in with his family and their knowledge of the area where he usually liked to set up his camp. SAR crews were able to narrow down the search area to a large, roadless drainage complex. The mission was carried out over 2 days, and due to the extreme ruggedness of the terrain and a large search area, multiple other agencies and individuals were called to assist. An incident command base was set up and SAR teams split up to search with foot teams and horse teams. Army National Guard helicopters were also utilized to search, as well as to shuttle SAR foot teams up to the high ridges. After being unable to locate the victim on Thanksgiving Day, crews returned the following day and began to search again. Due to GPS tracking of the search team's movements and extensive map working from the previous day's mission, search teams were able to narrow down the search area to exclude areas where the team had already passed during the previous days of search. Search teams eventually located the victim. Unfortunately, the victim was deceased. Karish Helicopters out of Manhattan, Montana, was assisting the mission that day and was able to land and assist SAR members in recovering the victim. While not being able to give out detailed information about the victim or what happened, we will tell you that he was known somewhat locally to have had a remarkable outdoor skills and a passion for the high country. He passed peacefully doing what he loved. The search mission was extensive and intense. The country was so steep and rugged that the helicopters were shuttling foot teams to be able to get them up to the high, rugged areas. The foot teams put on some real rough miles in the steep, snowy, high country. Likewise, the horse teams had put on some rough miles on horseback in that country that they covered. RV, SAR, would like to thank our members that gave up their Thanksgiving holiday to tirelessly search on that mission. We would also like to express our heartfelt gratitude to all those who came to assist and also gave up their Thanksgiving. These were the agencies: Madison County Sheriff's Department, Madison Valley Search and Rescue, Jefferson Valley Search and Rescue, Montana FWP Game Warden, and of course the aviation crews, Charlie Company, 189th GSAB Air National Guard with their 2 helicopters which are set up for SAR applications, and Karish Helicopter of Manhattan, Montana. A big thanks also to Chick's Restaurant in Adler and the Prospector in Sheridan for donating lunches to all the search crews, and Bread Zeppelin in Sheridan for providing snacks. Okay guys, that was from the Ruby Valley Search and Rescue, and one of the best written articles I have read in a very long time. I mean, they should have whoever wrote that article for them work for some of the newspaper rags that we read. But what is baffling and questionable to me is that they left or gave no name. Usually they do. There was no missing persons report put out on the news or in the papers. It was all held within. All right. And it's very strange and it's sad because it's just another proof of cover-up. I don't know how peaceful his death was. during a November hike where you're in the same article telling us how exhausted everyone was. And, they gave up on Thanksgiving, came back. So it must have been a pretty torturous hike. Beautiful, I'm sure, but torturous, yes. So I'm not claiming that this was Dogman or Sasquatch or whatever, but I'm just saying it's more proof that the government lies or keeps secrets from us. And that's just something that just baffles me, is how and why they do this. Anyway, on to the next part of the upload, which is pretty much the same part, but it's my theories and my kind of guesswork, I guess. I don't know how you'd call it. So let's touch basis on some of these missing 411s. Millions of people are visiting our beautiful national parks each year. They travel from one side of the continent to the other to see the breathtaking tall sequoias of the west coast to the pristine beaches of South Carolina on the east. Attendance numbers at national parks have set record highs in the last few years. According to Los Angeles Times, Death Valley, Joshua Tree, Sequoia, and Yosemite National Parks report setting attendance records during 2016, with all parks reporting a 330 million people visiting our recreational parks, and hundreds, maybe thousands of those people have gone missing. Shoshone National Forest, Amy Rowe. It was 21 years ago, on an afternoon, 1997, July 24th, Amy Rowe, 24, began her run outside of Lander, Wyoming, training for the 2000 Olympic marathon she had hoped to qualify for. She never returned. Wyoming is called America's biggest small town, and Lander is an outdoor enthusiast hub where climbers gravitate to the unique geological formations in Sink Canyon within the Shoshone National Forest. Sinks Canyon is part of a magnificent ecosystem stretching from sagebrush and juniper-covered hills through conifer forests, aspen meadows, to the alpine habitat in the mid-central Wyoming. Amy vanished while running along a lope road, a route that includes Sinks Canyon Road and runs the Papo Aggie River, approximately 15 miles south of Lander. Her car was found by her neighbors Todd Skinner and Amy Whistler, parked at Burnt Gulch, where Amy was marking her 10,000 hill climb. She was planning for the fall. When Amy had not returned by evening, her neighbors got into their car and headed for the gravel road of the switchbacks ascending to Loop Road. At approximately 1 in the morning, they find Amy's white Toyota Tercel wagon parked on the side of the road where Loop Road splits to the pine-shrouded Burnt Gulch turnoff. Now, the weather during July is mild, with days averaging 85 degrees and evenings about 54. There had been rain in the afternoon. Puddles of water surrounded the vehicle. Todd and Amy look for footprints or tire tracks, but see nothing. Only Amy's sunglasses. Now, mind you, there's 2 Amy's in this, so her keys in the driver's seat and her to-do list were found in her car. Her green Eagle wallet was missing. Panicked Todd calls Amy's husband Steve. The search for Amy began earlier the following morning with her husband Steve and about a dozen of friends. By day's end, dogs, dirt bikes, ATV, and over 100 volunteers had joined the search. The following day, horses and helicopters began searching the rugged terrain. By the 3rd day, police expanded the search to a 30-mile radius. As within most missing people, or missing wives, Police turned toward the husband, in this case Steve, a move that 20 years later appears totally unwarranted and limited the search with tunnel vision, the enemy of any investigation. Amy and Steve both graduated from the University of Wyoming. They'd been married little over a year. Steve was a climber. He and Amy both worked at Wild Iris, the local climbing shop. Amy taught the youth weightlifting class at Wind River Fitness Center and worked part-time at the Sweetwater Grill. By all appearances, they were the bubbly, happy newlyweds. They just bought their new first home in Lander, a population of 7,000. Police searched Steve's journals, and acquaintance gave conflicting statements about their relationship. Some described them as idyllic, while others stated Steve was often jealous and belittling. The FBI would make accusations Steve killed his wife, a claim current detectives disagree. Steve had an alibi, backing up by a fellow climber. At the time, he had been about 75 miles from his home in Lander. He met with his friend Sam Leitner and his yellow lab Jones and rode north to Cartage Creek area of the Shoshone National Forest to scout for a climbing location. According to Runner's World article, Long Gone Girl, Fremont County Sheriff Cold Case Detective Sergeant John Zagara disagrees with the way the case was handled in '97. Nowadays, everything is viewed as a homicide. Back then, it wasn't viewed that way. She was just a missing runner. For 3 days, Zerga said, we didn't close off any routes out of there. We didn't close off any vehicles. All we had was a bunch of people up there looking for a missing runner. We actually ruined the investigation with the vehicle because we allowed the Skinners to drive home. The investigation was not good for at least the first 3 days. There was a lot of stuff lost. While all eyes had been on Steve, it wouldn't be until over a decade later when the brother of Dale Wayne Eaton, 57, would talk to police. He had tried to contact law enforcement earlier, but no response. I think our detective, who was working the case, were so adamant that it was Steve, they weren't looking for any other directions. 15 years after Amy vanished, Zerga spoke to Eaton's brother, who told him Eaton would often camp in the area Amy had vanished. Few camped in that area, and few outside of Lander even knew about the area. So, needless to say, what they did was the police ended up tying a couple of things. This Dale Eaton character had murdered back in '88 Lisa Marie Kimmel. She vanished on a trip from Colorado to Montana. She was murdered and thrown off Government Bridge. Now, because he did that, they automatically assumed that he had killed Amy. But she is still missing to this day. Now, it could be this Eaton characters thing, but I'm really thinking it's something else. And we'll get there in a few minutes after I do a couple more of these. Coconino National Forest, David Barclay Miller. The Red Rock Secret Mountain Wilderness is a collection of buttes, cliffs, and canyons known as one of the most magnificent places on earth. The Red Rock Cliffs of the Mogollon Rim mark the edge of the Colorado Plateau in the Coconino National Forest. Sycamore Canyon Wilderness borders on the east. The high mesas of Secret Mountain and Wilson Mountain jut out into the lower canyons as deep as 1,500 feet, draining out into Oak Creek in the Verde River. Red is a predominant hue in the 43,000-acre. It is a 360-degree view of wind and water, sculpted pinnacles, arches, windows, and slot canyons. It is a place where sound bounces back and forth. almost in a musical chorus. Trails crisscross the area, taking one from the deepest gouges to the highest panoramas overlooking the beauty. David Miller, 22, was last seen at Beaver Creek Ranger Station preparing to leave on a 2-day hike on May 19th, 1998, in the Red Rock Secret Mountain Wilderness area. At the time of his disappearance, David was employed by the Sedona Forest Service. The weather was mild, 83 degrees, at night 51. David was last seen wearing a t-shirt, black hiking boots, and carrying a forest green Gregory backpack. It's thought David might have fallen on slippery surface or become lost. So this guy who works for a Forest Service just slipped off and fell into nowhere. Who knows? Could it be possible? Yeah, it could be possible, very possible. But does it seem logical? No, it doesn't. Moving on. Salmon Chalice National Forest. Dior coons. 2-year-old Dior coons vanished on July 10, 2015, while on a camping trip at Timber Creek Campground in the beautiful mountains of Idaho. Dior's father, Varnell, mother, Jessica Mitchell, and grandfather, Robert Walton, along with Isaac Renwald, Walton's friend and fishing buddy, had set up camp in the remote wilderness of the Salmon Chalice National Forest. The forest contains 4.3 million acres in east-central Idaho. The Frank Church River of No Return Wilderness area takes up to 1.3 million acres, the largest wilderness area in the continental U.S. The area is remote, rugged, and draws those seeking adventure, solitude, and breathtaking scenery. Now, everybody knows and has heard this encounter, or not encounter, but story. The mother and father went off to go fishing, left with the granddad. The kid supposedly kind of went out into the woods. When granddad looked, one second, he was gone. There's no evidence that he was attacked by any animals. There is no evidence of anything. No charges have been filed. There's no tracks, nothing. So, and it gets crazier and crazier. There's Rio Grande National Forest. Joe Keller, a 19-year-old adventurous young man from Cleveland, Tennessee, spending his summer with his friends exploring the West. Between freshman and sophomore year, they visited San Fran, Vegas, the Grand Canyon on the way to Joe's uncle, Rainbow Trout Ranch, San Juan Mountains of Colorado, rated one of the top fly fishing ranches ever. Well, needless to say, after a $10,000 reward for information, there was dogs put out, about 15 canines, 200 people on foot, horseback, an ATV. He was just gone. None of this makes sense. None of it. We've all heard these stories. They all sound the same. Person goes out into the woods, whether they have experience or not, and they're not seen. 1,600 and more people. Well, 1,600 people just don't go vanishing without a trace. And my belief is that about 15 to 20% of these people, of these 1,600 plus, are attacked by some sort of cryptid, Dogman, Sasquatch, you call it what you will, then I would say 5% by human hand. So this is where my theory is. Back in the heyday of America, when FDR was running the show and Truman was about to take over, what crashed in New Mexico? Well, we all know what did. So, okay, so here's my theory. National forests, 1,600 plus people disappear. Federal government does not keep tabs or track this. Why? Because it's a way of them not acknowledging it doesn't bring heat to them. Now, what I think is going on is supposedly FDR, Truman, had some sort of agreement with the extraterrestrial for technology and information. And then what do they get in return? They get to abduct a certain amount of American citizens for their experimentation. Now, 1947, Roswell, who's president? Truman, boom. People start disappearing. Roswell just happens to be, it just... So 70%, I think, is extraterrestrial related. I'm saying this as a high number. 20%, I believe, is cryptid related. And the reason why I say 20% is because the attacks that we experience and have, or sightings that we have, there's only been a limited amount of attacks compared to the mass amount of people that have just gone missing. I mean, in 2020, there was roughly 10 to 15 attacks, unexplained. No, less than that. I mean, 8, 9, if that. And they're horrendous and they're horrible. But compared to a missing 1,600 where there's no traces, but yet there is traces because the gentleman from the Crazy Mountain, his boots were found side by side by an extinguished fire pit. A year later or so, a couple years later, his backpack was discovered by a bush. Almost just discarded. And then his skeleton remains were found. Well, if it was a cryptid that had gotten that guy, I think the search and rescue teams would have found him. And his boots wouldn't be stacked side by side, and his backpack wouldn't have been found on a rancher's property, just, almost in sight of this person's home. Probably a smaller percent would be human interaction, and then we've got these portals that are popping up. So, yeah, I am a firm believer that the cases of people going missing in the national forest regions are alien abductions sponsored by our government. Just another way to stick it to us. Lie to us about cryptids, lie to us about this, and then sell, pretty much trade or sell their population for information so we can be a superpower. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense to anybody, but it makes sense to me. And that's why it's my theory, because it's mine. My theory might not make sense to you. Your theory might not make sense to me, but it's plausible. Alright guys, I hope you all enjoyed this bonus upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Having a really stressful day, so I'm trying to keep my mind occupied. And well, the majority of you know about my dad, and we last got him into a private physical rehabilitation center / nursing home. They just transferred him back to a hospital because his kidney infection is gotten worse. The man had a kidney transplant in 2010, and this will be the 4th hospital since November 20th, and my mom and I are just getting crap answers from crap doctors. The only people, honestly, that were giving us any kind of real information was the doctor and nurse that were at the rehabilitation center / nursing home. But because my dad was so bad, they transferred him back to the hospital. I don't know. So I got to keep myself occupied, or I'm probably just going to break down today. But thank you guys for supporting the channel. Thank you guys for being amazing. You guys really do make this channel special and continue to grow and go. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, our family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there. They are dangerous. Share a little bit of information with the people that you love and care about, and it may just save their lives someday. Never stop pushing back. God bless you all.